All right, let's read Genesis 3. Genesis 1, 3 through 13. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening and there was morning the second day. And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind, on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. All right, so what was created on the first day? This is Genesis 1, 3 through 5. Light was created on the first day. Well, darkness appears to have already been there, because if you go back up, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. So the light seems to be a creation in contrast to something that was already there. So darkness was already there, but light is created on that day. So, and what else? There is something else that appears to be created on that day too, if you think about it. Time appears to be created. This appears to be the start of time. And the reason we say that is because day, there's an evening and there's a morning, and there's day. And so that's a measurement of time. Day is a measurement of time. So time begins on this day. This is the first day.
Are you tracking verses 1 through 5 as one day? Or just...
Well, that's the point of last week. I'm probably tracking 3 through 5 as one day, and 1 and 2 as previous to that, when the eternal heavens were filled in and the eternal beings. But again, big parenthesis around that. Big quotations around that.
So you would distinguish verses 1 and 2?
Well, there's no beings to which to mark time for that need it, because if 1 and 2 are, if the heavens are being filled out in 1 and 2, angels and in some sense even beings don't need a mark for time. They're eternal beings. They don't live by time. And the heavens above that we will inherit is not a place of time. It's eternity. So it'll be an eternal day there. So, yes. And I believe the heavens were always an eternal day. We're just we're entering into the eternal day there. But, big parenthesis. I'm giving you only my opinions here. I would not teach this as actual doctrine. I'm giving you what I think. And I do think it's important that we think through these things, because, the reason I started really thinking deeply about these things was I sat down with Michelle and Christian, and he was about 2 years old, and I was sitting on the floor cross-legged sketching out the tree and what had happened and how Adam fell. Ryan actually was the trial lawyer for that. Now, the Scopes Monkey trial, we won. Most people don't know we won the trial. All right, we won the trial. But we lost in a court of public opinion. That thing was put on the radio. And one of the things, it's actually a movie that demonstrates this. One of the things was that Williams Jennings Bryan, who was the defense attorney, I think, was put on the trial himself, or put on the stand himself. And that the guy asked him questions about creation. And he couldn't answer them. And one of the questions he couldn't answer was, where did Cain get a wife? And so that's when that's just what really spurred me to start looking at the questions in Genesis. Not because my faith was shaken by that stuff. I have kind of a way I view things. Like, I always view apparent inconsistencies in the Bible as apparent inconsistencies in the Bible, not actual ones. There are things I don't understand. There's just my knowledge is so limited, and the comprehension of my knowledge is really limited. However, I came to realize that day that I was going to have children and I was going to have neighbors, and if I was going to enter the ministry, I was going to be a pastor, and I was going to have to engage broadly with a culture that doesn't believe this event. And they're going to have big questions, and they're going to have those gotcha questions at a party or in a public cafe, when those questions they like to ask their mom or their dad or their aunt who could never answer them and just get mad and walk away. And then I needed to be the guy who could sit calmly and give you what I think about that passage and help it make sense in the way that it is given. So that's why I came up. That's why I started thinking about these passages this way and started really looking closely at them. So light precedes creation as a material source as well. Light precedes the creation of a material source for light. I wanted to point out. So he creates light. But however, so we're sitting in a room now that's illuminated by sources of light. All right, so we create a light bulb as a source of light. We are mimicking, essentially, creation. We create a source of light. And there's a source of light out there. But on the first day, light's created, but it precedes all sources. All sources. There's no source for this light. The sun's not created until the fourth day. It's not hung in the sky until then. The stars are not there until the fourth day. There's no light in this passage, and it's important for us to note it, precedes all material sources. That's just a mystery. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with it. All I know is that one time I was listening to this. So every now and then I'll listen to like scientific lectures or something. And I heard this guy on like one of these TED Talks talk about how there's no such thing as absolute darkness. And I was like, well, what? And he said, yeah, if you're standing in it, there's no such thing as absolute darkness. The reason your eyes adjust and that you can make out form in absolute darkness, that you can make out a form, is because your body actually produces light in and of itself. There's a lot going on within your body. Heat, for instance, you are 98.6 degrees. All right, you're heated up to 100 degrees almost. If you put 100 degrees under a, like, just turn your oven on, close the door, and turn it to 100 degrees, and look through the thing, and what you will see is the elements, dull, very dully glowing, but they are there. All right, you yourself are a heat source. You have all kinds of processes going on within you. You know, we do EKGs. It's like these are like electrical, like the pulses within your body. We're tracing those off your heart. That's what we're doing. And wherever you have that kind of thing going on, you have light. So it's just very interesting in this passage that light precedes all of its sources. And I don't know what to do with it. I just am putting it out there as a mystery. It also appears to me that in some way light and time kind of come together too, since they're created on the same day. And again, light and time. Day is a measurement of time. Day is not a source for time. Right? Day doesn't source time. Day doesn't cause time. That clock doesn't cause time. That clock only measures time. Day is only a measurement of time. And a measurement of day precedes the sun, which is how we actually built our calendar. It was on a solar calendar, a solar sun. We talk about the earth rotating around, right, going around in one day, not going around the sun, but rotating around to make one day, and then going around the sun to make 1 year, and that's 365 days, right? But here you have both time and light preceding the existence of the sun, preceding the existence of all sources that we could draw from. That light and time exist of themselves apart from all sources.
Yeah, and then verse 14 says, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night.
Uh-huh.
So what was it like?
Yeah, I don't know. That we have to get to that verse. Like that, there's a lot in the next set of things that are interesting to compare. Like in the next 3 days, there are some things to compare about that. You just pointed out one of them. So that's why I chose to deal with them like in threes like this, because you really need to do the first three before you do the second three, because there are some things that are said in the second three that sort of arise out of the first three.
And even today, talk about the water.
Let's pull up and get to that. Let's go ahead and go to that because we're going to run out of time pretty quick. So Light as creation stands alone from its sources of day, precedes the sun. As I said, light and time are not dependent on the objects to which they are connected, but are established by God first. So, what did God create on the second day? So, Gary already alluded to it. It's the atmosphere and sky between the earth, okay? Because the expanse, like sometimes we think about the expanse, and we think about the expanse being the sky, but the expanse really is everything between land and atmospheric sky is the expanse. And the atmosphere above creates the barrier that sort of keeps what, if we even know it as air or oxygen, or the air that we breathe between. But there's an interesting interplay with the words there. So what do we learn from the creation of the sky on the second day, or the creation of the atmospheric sky on the second day? It's taken from the water, right? It's taken from the water. There would be an interesting point about this that'll come up next week in one of the next things. So it's taken out of the water, for one, which makes a lot of sense to us. I really don't want to do. It's hard to not engage it in the scientific world that we live in, or in the climate that we live in. I really don't want to do a bunch of creation science here, because I think that's kind of done a lot. However, it is interesting with our scientific knowledge that we have now. We go to the atmosphere, we find the general elements that you find here on the earth, or in water, especially in the atmosphere, to the point that water falls from the sky. Right? Clouds are created, water condensation, it develops, it's held. I mean, one of the things they're discussing right now with this, like carbon footprints and all that kind of stuff. Carbon's not unique to the earth. It's not. Carbon-based life forms is generally what you're called. I don't know how carbon-based life forms don't create carbon. I don't even know how you don't have accumulation of carbon in the atmosphere. This kind of thing. But someone who has a very anti-view of the Christian faith will say something like this. They will say something like, well, you see Moses walking around, and he looked out the Mediterranean, and he saw that it was blue. Or he looked out, and he saw blue water. And then he looked up, and he saw blue sky. And he said, man, the sky must also be made of water. So that's the way the modern sort of person who has no belief or trust in any of the things that are recorded in the scriptures or in Christ or in God at all would say. However, I don't believe that's the case at all. I don't think that's the case at all. So one of the things that we get into when we get to Genesis 6 through 9 will be a flood, right? So one of the things that's been posited here, and there's good reason to think, I think that this is also true, is that originally the earth was created more like a terrarium. Now we still are like a terrarium, like we still capture what some people believe is that what there was a barrier created around the earth, and this plays into a little bit of creation science. I don't want to do a ton of it, but a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but some creation scientists believe that because this terrarium of water, that there were more ultraviolet rays that were filtered out of the sun before that light reached the earth, and that was one of the main reasons why you would read of people with very long life, because one of the things that causes age on us, which we've learned.
So if that's the case, is it there's some community created that somebody lives in that filters out ultraviolet light?
You want to live inside all day?
Huh?
You said you want to live inside all day? I mean,
You'd have to live in it forever.
It happened like in 2010. Like this hasn't been around for a long time. People theorizing on.
I mean, there's plenty of flat earthers who believe that you should live under a giant ice wall. They believe that it was an ice wall. They believe the earth was like encased in ice at that time.
Yeah,
I have a buddy who's a Christian who
you think
believes that
that
the earth
somebody
was
would be living like that. If that,
It'd be interesting. It's an interesting theory. I don't know that it could be recreated, but it's certainly an interesting theory. And see, I was going to say something else. Oh yeah, when the great heavens broke up, that the 40 days of rain was actually the loss of the material side of that terrarium. And then after the flood, that's why you see as you age toward Abraham, you see the breakdown of ages among that time till they get to around 120 be the max age. Oldest we would see people 115. Anyway, it's very interesting. Is that in all vegetation there's the ability to sustain its life. The first life is abundant, it's fruitful, it's self-propagating, right? When God creates life, the first life is abundant and it's fruitful and it's self-propagating. It displays the provision of God for his creatures, which is think about because there are no creatures. There has not been any creature created here. So, but it gives you a little bit of the mind of God here. It displays the provision of God, of God's creatures that he has yet to be made. So it shows him as providential. What elements are accounted for in the first 3 days of creation? They are light, they are time, days of measurement of time. They are sky, they are land, they are sea, and they are plant life. Now, just real quick.
Well, I mean, even just the fact that science used to be just like the observation of the world around us. So the whole point of science was just like trial and error to see like, is this true about the world around us? It was all just observable. Like I'm just trying to figure out, clearly God made the earth this way, but I'm trying to figure out if I say this statement, is that true of what God made or not? Where honestly, like, I don't even know what you do when you get like a science degree anymore, honestly. Or like you take a science class and like I don't even know what they do in here.
Yeah, it's one of the difficult things is that in the past, let's say pre-Enlightenment, all science was done, and even the early Enlightenment, it's hard to have it, like there's a blurred line, there's a time where science moves from like a creation Christian understanding to a more pagan materialist understanding, and it's over a longer period of time, like probably 1800 and 1900, but it had been going on in some ways even a couple of 100 years by then. But when you look at science as a whole, there's a time when people were asking, what does this teach me about God? So the scientists were coming at it from a religious perspective in the same way that Abraham looked at the world around him. And Abraham did not think the way we think. Ever since Francis Bacon, the only thing we do is look outside and say, well, what's that made of? And what can I do with it? So it's all about creation and its basic particles and how that creation can be used to make us more comfortable. Basically, that's the view of science now. What's it made of, and how can we use it to make mankind more comfortable? All right. In the past, though, people looked at the world and they didn't say, what is it made of and how can I use it? They're not asking the question like, what is it made of and how can I use it? They're asking like, who made it and what is its meaning? And then after that, but if it doesn't have any meaning, then it can be used for whatever you want. Instead of splitting atoms can be used for two things. It can be used to create energy for cities, or it can be used to destroy entire civilizations.
Plus, they don't have to answer the question where it came from.
Yes, and they can avoid the question. Yes, that is true. That's a very big one. So these things, we can also look at this and see the vastness of God. And thank you that you teach us and you lead us and you guide us in this way. Help us, Father, to not look at the world and ask, what is this thing made of and how can we use it, manipulate it to make ourselves more comfortable. Help us, Father, to first ask who made it and to learn of you by looking at it. And then, Father, ask, what is its meaning? What does it communicate to us? What does it tell us about the God of creation? Paul says to us is that it tells us that there is a God, that he is good. It even speaks to his eternal nature and his Godhead and all those things. We just don't look very often, Father. We are not looking at creation and asking for who made it and what is its meaning. We have to slip into a very, very scientific worldview that just asks, what is it made of and how can I manipulate it for my own advantage? That is not a Christian view. That is a praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. A big parenthesis around that first day, gap. So That's Friday.
Yeah, Friday.
Go get the plastic.